Bowie made weird alluring. He made weird seductive. And on Blackstar, he's using his weirdness to decode death. Welcome to the labyrinth that is the last surviving years of Bowie's career. Not this labyrinth. This story of David Bowie's Blackstar record and song is something I'm completely obsessed with. And it starts here. It's a theme to a TV show, the 2015 BBC crime series called The Last Panthers. And the show needs a theme, so the show's director, Johan Renck, says, I'm going to ask my absolute hero, and he meets up with Bowie, and he shows him 2 episodes, which Bowie likes him, and he agrees to write the theme. Then, well, it ends up becoming a whole album, and it's his last album. So Blackstar, in the beginning, is just a song about a TV show, but by the time the video comes out, the song has gone from under a minute to almost 10 minutes long. Bowie sings, take your passport and shoes, I'm not a pop star. Take your sedatives, boo, I'm a black star. Now, I don't want to stray, but I'm going to put my top 5 Bowie songs at the end of this video, right? Classic move right there. So January 2016, David drops his 26th or something album, depending on live albums, EPs, comps, soundtracks, and singles. It's way more. To set the scene, I want to go quickly to the 70s, where we see Bowie changing styles rapid fire. And then in the 80s, the ideas, they kind of form and stick with just new romantic pop through that decade. But by the 90s, to me, that's when it gets most interesting, because here he's broken all the rules. So he's got nothing left to do but exist in a world without rules. We got this David Bowie who no longer is needing to establish himself to the world or please his label with hit songs. David Bowie has become one of the biggest rock stars in the whole universe. So this existential nihilist, kind of pre-cyberpunk man comes to fruition. Outside is his scary monsters for the 90s, with notions of 21st century dystopia lingering from his unfinished 1984 musical that seems to carry through here. But that part's going to keep fading, and what's ahead is this idea of mortality. More records come out, and then there's this waiting period. He has an operation in 2004, and things slow. From 1967 to 1977, Bowie was releasing 1 or more albums a year, but now it's crickets. 10 years later, basically out of nowhere to the fans, he drops his 25th album the next day. And the surprise has been, it's like been 10 years since reality, like I said, and the next day makes this arrival of Doom Bowie. He's working on something in his head, and it's coming out in his songs. It's during this period that he, in passing, says to producer Tony Visconti, he's referring to the time when things end. The title track from The Next Day, we're already hearing these end of days thoughts. It opens with this lyric. Look into my eyes, he tells her, I'm gonna say goodbye. Here's a 66-year-old Bowie at the time, musically wild and raw as he's gotten. It sounds like it could have come out in 1979 on Lodger. But what we hear is a foreshadowing. I don't think he's aware of the album he's going to make next, Blackstar, but being a sax player, he's always wanted to make a jazz album. Bowie starts playing saxophone when he's 14 in 1961. His mom buys him the saxophone as a gift. He's already exploring on other instruments at the time too, but the saxophone really gets him. When he was a little kid, he was noted to be an above average musician than the other kids. He was great at the recorder, which leads to the saxophone. But also, even that's evidenced as Bowie rocks out on the penny whistle on the rippin' glam track Moon Age Daydream from Ziggy Stardust. I love that little penny whistle thing. Which sounds like Tchaikovsky, you know? So for mainstream 21st century culture, jazz is kind of tied to people's grandparents or some old movie memories or the beatniks, all great things, but it shouldn't be seen as a trend. So that's interesting that Bowie is interested in something that isn't totally futuristic. Now I'm going to say a name, Terry Burns. That's Bowie's 10 years older schizophrenic brother who turned him on to jazz. So what you have is David's passionate about the style of music that's forever linked to loss and sadness and confusion, especially after 1985, which is when Terry Burns sadly passed away. And so by the 2000s, Bowie's still a rocker, but he's lived a hard life, and though he's in great shape outside, inside his body is not what it used to be. By the time he's recording Blackstar, he's diagnosed with cancer. He's got the top jazz musicians in the world in the studio with him, but none of them know about these health issues. And I get that, because when I'm in the studio, what we focus on is the work. Personal stuff, no matter how important it gets, it doesn't need to be shared in order to lock musically. His intent is to record a jazz record, but it ends up leaning cyberpunk. And that's the thing. Bowie always needs to go out of his wheelhouse and bring new elements back. When a musician wants vital new music, it requires to push outside of ourselves, to push far out. And this man is the creative master of that. So for this record, he knows it's going to be his closing statement. And Bowie's influences are hip-hop and soul. Longtime producer Tony Visconti, who was there most of the ride, he saw this record as an artistic parting gift. It's like Bowie's always thinking about his fans. And I think that's because Bowie's such a music fan himself. So you got the album and then the title track. And I want to talk about the title track of Blackstar. When it came out, it was the longest song ever to reach the Billboard Hot 100. It was 9 minutes and 57 seconds, and it was actually shortened on Visconti's recommendation so it could even chart Hot 100. But to kind of balance it out, Blackstar, the album, is only 7 songs. That's almost an EP. And he calls the record Blackstar. And I think something that he generally does is he titles an album after the single. Diamond Dogs, Scary Monsters, Let's Dance, Ziggy Stardust, Space Oddity. It's not a hard and fast rule in the catalog, but it's like about 80%. For me, it was the Pet Shop Boys that introduced me to Bowie. I was reading in a Rolling Stone when I was a kid, singer Neil Tennant saying that Bowie was one of his biggest influences. So for Christmas, Mom bought me Aladdin Sane, and Bowie is one of my biggest influences for all my music. But let's think about a black star in science. Like, what is that? It's like a tiny little black hole without a horizon, a star that sucks all of its own light back in. It sounds perplexing, but that's exactly what Bowie likes. Maybe the next David Bowie, if you're out there right now, you should invent a type of music that doesn't have an ending, but when you play it, all the notes disappear. Do it! I think that this theory of black stars came out like in the last 20 years, so like after the time of Elvis, who also had a song called Black Star. Bowie loved Elvis. They shared a birthday, January 8th. But obviously they were pretty different. But Elvis did do this song, Black Star. It wasn't released in his lifetime, but it was the title track for this movie that changed its title. It was called Black Star, and they changed the title to Flaming Star. And it's not a very good movie. I've seen all the Elvis movies. I like the bad ones the best. This one just kind of falls in the middle, but it's definitely about impending doom. A lyric goes like this. And when I see that old flaming star, I'll know my time has come. One day I'll see that old flaming star over my shoulder. Yes, I will. And when I see that old flaming star, then I'll know my time has come. And then the earlier version, the Black Star version, is, and when I see that black star, I'll know my time has come. And it came for Elvis too soon in 1977, just like it's coming for everybody. It's the only promise we know for certain. So eat all the peanut butter and banana sandwiches you can and do all the karate you want, because like Nick Cave sings about on that Murder Ballads album, all things move toward their end. He told Specs in 2013, in my eyes, Bowie stands for a certain kind of immortality. Nick Cave and David Bowie. In lyrics, both of these two draw from fictional characters. The characters are in some type of torment or badness. But Bowie specifically uses science fiction throughout the catalog to express a central theme. And it's especially starting in the 90s. And it just increases the heightened central theme, which is the existential isolation of each living soul from the perceived experience of the outside world. From Major Tom, who's drifting away, to the title track of Aladdin Sane, to characters sick of living on Earth questioning maybe life is better on Mars, to the entirety of the Outside album into 2000's Heathen the next day, and then peaking, of course, at Black Star is this psychological exile. It's almost like to a spiritual level. It's extreme. Other artists have done this. They've made music about the process of dying while dying, but it's not a ton. Last Donut of the Night by Jay Dilla and You Want It Darker by Leonard Cohen. They were both written when those artists knew that their end time was coming. It's sad and it's unfortunate, but it's also part of the human process, which is why I think it's amazing when a songwriter documents it for us. Picasso said, only put off until tomorrow what you're willing to die having left undone. And in any of this, we've gone so far, I've got to remind myself and you that Tony Visconti warned about Blackstar. Don't overread into the lyrics, you know? Don't project ideas onto songs that the artist had no intent on in the beginning, because really only Bowie knows, and he took that with him. The title track isn't actually the most pointed track on the record about death. The one that really is reflecting outwardly on mortality is the last single Bowie would ever release in his life, track 3, Lazarus. Look up here, I'm in heaven. I got scars that can't be seen. So Lazarus is the title of Bowie's off-Broadway musical, and it's inspired by the movie The Man Who Fell to Earth. It's about this guy who's an alien stranded on Earth, but he can't die. So he's really missing his lost love. And Lazarus is for certain going to pull you down the Bowie Blackstar rabbit hole. Talk about a coincidence. Leonora Carrington wrote a short story called White Rabbits. And in it is a rabbit named Lazarus with bandages over its eyes, just like Bowie in the video for Lazarus. And the thing is, when you hear people talk about Bowie, they talk about his insane intelligence and how well-read he was. So he's pulling from everywhere, you know, if he's pulling from Aleister Crowley, if he's maybe pulling from references to black stars in popular culture, it gets cryptic, but I think the cryptic parts are Bowie consciously saying, hey, I want you to have fun with this, because he's aware of his fans and he's aware of this world, this fictional world that he's created, which is always a little bit Bowie and then a little bit, you know, David Jones. Listening to music is also an imaginative experience, meaning here, I took all the parts from my favorite songs and invented this new song. We're constantly making new robots from hand-me-down parts as songwriters. Music gets passed on from person to person rather than invented in full. I need to get into this video for Blackstar because it's a whole transcendental journey in itself, with some sinister leanings that aren't at all compatible with the BBC crime miniseries. Even though the director of that show went on to direct the video, I see that video as like a sinister critique. It's not saying that death itself is sinister. The video is saying more that our socialized or civilized ideas surrounding death are sinister. The methods in here are mystic, and we can't lose sight of the mystical in our creations and in our artworks and in our songs. You got this astronaut, clearly that's Major Tom, with a bejeweled skeleton inside. Those bejeweled skeletons are known as catacomb saints from the 16th, 17th century in Catholicism, and there's this candle to represent the passage of time, and what some people would call occult rituals, not me. It's an elegant and a disturbing short film, this video, with some sinister Crowley references, like in the book that David's holding. Crowley's something Bowie references in other places too, like in Quicksand, for example, off of Hunky Dory. One thing that's interesting about the lyrics is this main lyric in Blackstar. He's talking about the village of Ormond, which is totally cryptic, I think, which is in Norway, and it might be a reference to Hermione Farthingale, Bowie's ex from 1969, who's from Norway, and then she left him. She went away to star in this musical called Song of Norway, which I didn't put the two together till I read that this musical was written by a guy named Milton Lazarus. So who knows? The secret meanings and codes are really fascinating to pontificate, and they're everywhere. But I'm always leaning back into what Visconti says and not over projecting, though it's fun. Keeping the mystery keeps the magic, and like, what is music if anything but magical? But I remember when it happened, January 10th, 2016. It was a shock. But I'd already cried all my music tears when we lost Lou Reed in 2013. And I haven't cried about a celebrity since. I usually only cry over people I know personally, but everybody's different, and there's no right or wrong to how we grieve. And we get a whole window into Bowie's journey through it. I go into my studio, I dim the lights, I crank the speaker, and I soak in this masterpiece. And the whole time I'm thinking, whatever weirdness happens when we go, I bet he's really into that. Not the physical pain or the loss of people, but having the cosmos finally revealed. Finally, Bowie got to know all his existential answers. That made me happy. Time goes fast, man. So just a couple days ago, I'm at this Bowie night. the DJ, Jake Rude, gets on the microphone. He says, hey, heads up. The last song of the Bowie tribute night is going to be Blackstar, and along with its 10-minute accompanying video. And it was amazing, even though we were just dancing in a nightclub. Because dancing lets the spirit talk. The body transcends, with music as its device, this dimension. And we step inside of the song. Dancing is the closest we ever get to becoming music. Here we are doing this thing that is incredibly alive to a song that's about the opposite. Combined with this extraordinary instance of a person contemplating his future on existential terms within a song and in a video, it's like one of the most profound moments I've ever had on a dance floor. What makes Blackstar paradoxical, like an MC Escher piece or this scene from Labyrinth with Jareth the Goblin King, is even in his most authentic human moment. It's like in that alien abduction movie from the 80s, Communion, where Christopher Walken says, I am the dreamer, you are the dream. And now I get to tell you my top 5 Bowie songs. Now, there's not going to be any big pop songs here on this list. It was hard enough to pick a top 5, so please don't yell at me for liking these 5 songs, but here we go. Always Crashing in the Same Car from Low, Quicksand from Hunky Dory, Looking for Water from Reality, We Prick You from Outside, and of course, Lazarus from Blackstar. And if you like these pontifications, you might want to check out my book here. That's my book plug. The Happiness Playlist, it's called. Or check it out from the library. We love libraries here. Peace out.